chapter 8. And it came to pass at the end of 20 years, wherein Solomon had built the house of the Lord, and his own house, that the cities which Hiram had given to Solomon, Solomon built them, and caused the children of Israel to dwell there. And Solomon went to Hamath Zobah, and prevailed against it. And he built Tadmor in the wilderness, and all the store cities, which he built in Hamath. Also he built Beth-horon the upper, and Beth-horon the nether, fortified cities, with walls, gates, and bars. And Baalath, all the store cities that Solomon had, and all the cities of his chariots, and the cities of his horsemen, and all that Solomon desired to build for his pleasure in Jerusalem, and in Lebanon, and in all the land of his dominion. As for all the people that were left of the Hittites, and the Amorites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, who were not of Israel, of the children that were left after them in the land, whom the children of Israel consumed not, of them did Solomon raise a levy of bondservants unto this day. But of the children of Israel did Solomon make no servants for his work, but they were men of war, and chief of his captains, and rulers of his chariots and of his horsemen. And these were the chief officers of King Solomon, even 250 that bore rule over the people. And Solomon brought up the daughter of Pharaoh out of the city of David unto the house that he had built for her. For he said, No wife of mine shall dwell in the house of David, king of Israel, because the places are holy, whereunto the ark of the Lord hath come. Then Solomon offered burnt offerings unto the Lord on the altar of the Lord, which he had built before the porch, even as the duty of every day required, offering according to the commandment of Moses on the Sabbaths, and on the new moons, and on the appointed seasons, 3 times in the year, even in the feast of unleavened bread, and in the feast of weeks, and in the feast of tabernacles. And he appointed, according to the ordinance of David his father, the courses of the priests to their service, and the Levites to their charges, to praise and to minister before the priests, as of the duty every day required. The doorkeepers also by their courses at every gate, for so had David the man of God commanded. And they departed not from the commandment of the king unto the priests and the Levites concerning any matter, or concerning the treasures. So all the work of Solomon was set in order, from the day of the foundation, and of the house of the Lord, and until it was finished. So the house of the Lord was perfected. Then went Solomon to Etzion-Geber and Elat, on the seashore in the land of Edom. And Hiram sent him by the hands of his servants, ships, and servants that had knowledge of the sea. And they came with the servants of Solomon to Ophir, and fetched from there 450 talents of gold, and brought them to King Solomon. All right, let's go back up to verse 1. Now, yesterday God had told Solomon that he would keep the kingdom as long as he obeyed the law of God, and his children obeyed the law of God. They would always be in control of the kingdom which God had given them rule over. See, God had given them the kingdom, and God had given them the rule of it. Verse 1, we'll pick it up here. And it came to pass at the end of 20 years, wherein Solomon had built the house of the Lord and his house. At the end of this period, at the end of 20 years, this 20, because we can witness the law in these greater understandings, wherein Solomon had built the house, and that house that had been hallowed, had been set aside, and God said, I'm going to put my name here, I'm going to keep my eyes on this place, and my ears open to any prayer that's made here. Verse 2, that the cities which Hiram had given to Solomon, Solomon built them, and caused the children of Israel to dwell there. And these cities which Hiram had given to Solomon, these cities that Hiram is those of nobility, really, and what it is those that have exalted Hiram, and that is to be exalted. Those ones even of nobility, these ones even will find that wear the colors of nobility to Solomon, and these would be these cities. We're going to find out these names of these cities. These cities were of the land of Edom, and they had been controlled by Israel, maybe at some point. And Solomon built these cities and caused the children of Israel to dwell there. And these were cities that had been taken over by Edom in the past. And Solomon went to Hamath Zobah and prevailed against it. And Solomon went to Hamath Zobah. Hamath is that fortress. See, it's the fortress, remember, of walls, the fortress of enclosures even. And it's that of the post. And Zobah is a post. It's like a marker or an old road sign. Maybe we would have a marker that pointed this way to that town and this way to that town. A marker of some sort that tells us something. That's what it refers to. And Solomon prevails against it, and we're going to find out this is where he will set up his embattlements. And he built Totmor in the wilderness, and Totmor is that palm tree in the wilderness. Wilderness refers to the place of these a forested area. It's also the place where the words drive out. And this Totmor is like a palm tree or an erect, a fruit tree even there in that place. And all the store cities would be places of storage, places where they would gather in the harvests and the fruits, and these places where they would store up the grapes and make the wine, and these store cities, which he built in Hamath. And this would be that place where they would store up, and it's the fortress of walls. Because it's going to be a stronghold. Also, he built Beth Horon, the upper, and Beth Horon, the nether, fortified cities with walls, gates, and bars. And he built Beth Horon, and Beth Horon is Beth is house. The word means house or abode or a dwelling place. And Koran is this holes. We remember Koran is holes, and it's kind of like these holes. We can tell they're holes because there's some light shining through them. The upper refers to, because there's going to be a divided place here. There's the upper hole, and the lower, the nether. That means to be lower. They were fortified cities with walls, gates, and bars, and these full fortified cities, and they would be fortified with walls, and the walls are those things of separation, those things that divide, they separate out, and these gates, places of judgment even, that's where they go in and out. And these bars represent these iron bars where they used, it's like to be retained in a prison, so to speak, with these bars. These bars are made of iron, and they represent these rules, these laws of men. And Baalath, and all the store cities that Solomon had, and all the, verse 6, for his chariots, and for the cities of his horsemen, and all that Solomon desired to build for his pleasure in Jerusalem, and in Lebanon, and in all the land of his dominion. And Baalath, and all the store cities that Solomon had. Baalath was another store place, a place of stores. And Baalath is this Lord. The Lord, even in a feminine sense, is what it is. And Baal is that Lord image in a feminine sense, or this one who would be referred to as a feminine image, or not a god. These that Solomon had, and that Solomon is this peace one, this one of peace that God sent. He promised to, and all the cities of his chariots, and these cities of the horsemen, and all that Solomon desired to build for his pleasure in Jerusalem. We'll find out all these cities of the horsemen, and these cities of the horsemen and the chariot cities. These chariots are war machines. They are always going to represent the judgment of God. When God sends judgment, he will send the armies upon them. And and that's what the chariots represent, these war machines. And these cities of the horsemen. Cities is a place that has a guard. It's a place that has a guard. for their horsemen. These horsemen, a horse is something of strength. It represents this strength that men set on, giving them great strength up above everybody, and that's what the horseman represents, and all the Solomon desired to build for his pleasure in Jerusalem. And that's that place of peaceful teachings. That's that teachings of peace, and Jerusalem is the place of it. In Lebanon, Lebanon is white. It refers to pureness, or that place that's made white, in all the land of his dominion. 7. And as for all the people that were left of the Hittites, and of the Amori, and the Perizzi, and the Hibbi, and the Jebusi, who were not of Israel, and all these other people, well, and we're talking about the Hittites, as it says, the Amorites, but it's the Amori. And these Hittites, these are the descendants of Ham, and these are and it means those of terror. Those of terror. And the Amori, these would also be descendants of the Noah, who were in the time, who had the covenant, had violated, and God was bringing wrath and judgment upon the Amori. These are those prominent ones, these speakers, these soothsayers. I call them the soothsayers, these ones who, they all have a lot of pleasant words, but there's nothing in them. And the Perizzi, are those that dwell openly. They're everywhere. God calls them to dwell openly and abundantly. And the Hibbi, when you're in judgment, the Hibbi in the living place. And those that do dwell openly, even in that living place, that place that gives life. That's where, that's within you even. These would be the Jebusites, and the Jebusites, or the Jebusites, are those that thresh. And the thresh means that you take something and it beat out, and what you're doing is separating. You're beating it out, separating, because the wind's going to separate. It'll carry the shaft away and leave the grain. This would be the beginning of that process to thresh. 8. Of the children that were left after them in the land, whom the children of Israel consumed not, of them did Solomon raise a levy of bondservants unto this day. And these would be the ones that Solomon would raise a bondservant. As bondservants, he would raise a levy over. This is going to be a tax. This levy is another word for a tax. He's going to put a tax on them and make them pay a tax, or a tributary, as it's sometimes referred to. Generally, a tributary would be something placed on a kingdom, and a levy would be something placed on an individual, or a tax. And this makes them a bondservant. This is one way they can be identified even as a bondservant, even unto this day. And this day means a understanding, even in an understanding, this bond servant. We'll keep an eye on these, because later on they will appear again. But of the children of Israel did Solomon make no servants for his work, but they were men of war, and the chief of his captains, and rulers of chariots, and of his horsemen. But all the children of Israel, we'll see that these were of the land. See, these would be the sojourners, those that are strangers in the land, these sojourners that he put a levy on. Solomon, but the children of Israel, he did not make servants. He let them be his chief of captains, these men of war, these rulers of chariots. These chariots represent that place where they stand up there. They got a hold of the reins, and they think they can control these great strengths and these judgments of God. And his horsemen, even these men that ride upon these great strengths. 10. And these were the chief officers of the king Solomon, even 250 that bore rule over the people. And this number of the chief officers, these would be the rulers that the king has given authority. Solomon, that peace God promised he was going to send. Even these 250 that bore rule over the people. 200, now witness, because see, there's judgment. 2 is the witness, 100 is judgment, and 50, see, that's 5 tens. There's grace even in the law if you witness the judgment. 11. And Solomon brought up the daughter of Pharaoh out of the city of David unto the house that he had built for her. For he said, No wife of mine shall dwell in the house of David, king of Israel, because the places are holy, whereunto the ark of the Lord hath come. And Solomon, kind of going to change subjects a little bit here, he brought up the daughter of Pharaoh out of the city of David. And Solomon, we would find this story in Kings. Solomon had taken the daughter of Pharaoh for wife, and Solomon, this daughter of Pharaoh, daughter is to be from the wife of Pharaoh, and that would be to share. That would be the understanding of Pharaoh, and this daughter would be that understanding of Pharaoh, even that would go forth from him. Pharaoh is that great house. He was the king of. It was the position that's over Egypt. See, that place of holes, that place of pits, that place of graves. And he brings her from the city of David. That's the city of the beloved. David means that beloved, the chosen one, yeah, unto the house that he had built for her, because he had built for her a house. He had made her, married her, and took her to wife, and we'll find out a house wasn't all he built for her. No wife of mine shall dwell in the house of David, king of Israel, because the places are holy, whereunto the ark of the Lord hath come. And Solomon said that his wife wasn't going to dwell there in the house where David. He is the beloved, the king of Israel, those that contend with the mighty one, because the places are holy. They were holy because the ark had been there, and that had made them hallowed. But the ark was holy, and wherever the ark would be the hallowed place. 12. Then Solomon offered burnt offerings unto the Lord on an altar of the Lord, which he had built before the porch. Then Solomon offered burnt offerings unto the Lord. Then Solomon, he's the king that God's established now, the Solomon, that peace which God promised he would send. He offers these burnt offerings unto the Lord, and we'll find out these burnt offerings are those things that are going to pass through the fire and make atonement unto the Lord on the altar of the Lord, which he had built before the porch. And this altar here would not be the altar before the Lord. This is a separate altar that he had made, and it's on the porch. And this porch is that place that is attached to. It means that attached to, and it's just got a covering over it. It's attached to the house of God. 13. Even as the duty of every day required, offering according to the commandment of Moses on the Sabbaths and on the new moons and on the appointed seasons, 3 times in the year, even on the feast of unleavened bread and on the feast of weeks and in the feast of tabernacles, even as the duty of every day required. And that would be according to the law, even we'll find according to the commandment of Moses on the Sabbaths, and these would be on the Sabbaths, those days that was appointed for rest. That's what a Sabbath refers to. Those days that are appointed to rest. On the new moons, these new moons, this would be a Sabbath, and a new moon is when the moon changes its cycle. See, a moon goes through a cycle, and it comes from darkness, goes around, it has a greater point of light, then it'll begin its descension back into darkness, and when it's in total darkness, that's the new moon. And these appointed seasons, and we're going to find out that these appointed seasons, we have them here. These would be those seasons which God has appointed. Season refers to a broader period of time, even a series of moons, a cycle, we'll see, of a period of time, or a season like in the spring, fall, winter, and summer. We have our seasons. And so we have seasons in life. See, everything kind of has a season, a period of its beginning, and then a period of its height, and then a period of its descension, back, down. You see what I mean? These would be referred to as seasons. These 3 times in the year. And these 3 times refers to these 3, that's complete. See, that completes the whole year. These 3 times, or these 3 periods in the year. And these 3 periods in the year make up a year, or this complete understanding. Even the feast of unleavened bread, see, this would be the beginning. when the barley reaches its full and its height. That's how they knew when the year would begin. It was set almost in exact course of days. Slight variation. The unleavened bread, that's Passover. God commands that you put all the leavening from your house. It's a similitude, the leavening, because they didn't have time to bake bread. See, when they come up out of Egypt, they didn't have time to bake bread when they come up out of that land of enclosures. This leavening means to add much to it. This to which to make it rise. And we can get into this. This has a great similitude with God and His law. God brought them up out of Egypt with unleavened bread by the law. And that's what it all goes down to. It has nothing with man to do with it. And in this feast of unleavened, this feast of weeks, this feast of the weeks, this is that period of the weeks, this period of festival of the weeks, which we can number. It's set from the day of unleavened bread even. This period of unleavened bread from that festival, and this is going to refer to the harvest. This refers to the period of harvests even. These great harvests of God and the Feast of Tabernacles, and that was required to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. And it's just kind of like two beginnings in a year. We have one beginning in the seasons, and then we have another beginning of these periods. And this Feast of Tabernacles, and when they come up out of Egypt, they did dwell in booths. And that's what these tabernacles are, these booths they place up over them. This would be this feast. It's called Sukkot. And because Sukkot means booths. 14. And he appointed, according to the ordinance of David, his father, the courses of the priests to their service, and the Levites to their charges, to praise and to minister before the priests, as the duty of every day required. The doorkeepers also by their courses at every gate, for so had David, the man of God, commanded. And he appoints, according to the ordinance of David, his father, that these courses, those positions, see, each one would play, and in their period of their time would they do these service, and the Levites to their charges, as well as the Levites, those that join, to their charges, to praise and to minister before the priest. And these priests, these would be the Zadok, and these other Levites, are those that minister before the priest. These that minister will find in the praisings of God, and they keep all the duties of the house, every duty, everything that was required every day, and that's in every understanding. The doorkeepers also, and these doorkeepers are those that stand, will find, by the gates. They keep the ways. That's what the doorkeeper means. They keep the door, also by their courses, every gate. And this is in every judgment. For so had David, the man of God, commanded. And David had done this. We'll find he gave Solomon the blueprint according to the hand of God, according to the work of God that God commanded him. 15. And they departed not from the commandment of the king unto the priest and Levites concerning any matter or concerning the treasures. And they departed not from this commandment to the king had give to the priest and the Levites concerning any matter, according to that which was established. That's what they did, even concerning all the treasures, all the wealth that was brought into the house of God. 16. So all the work of Solomon was set in order from the day of the foundation of the house of the Lord, and until it was finished. So the house of the Lord was perfected. And so all the work that Solomon is at peace. God said he was going to send. He was set in order from the day of the foundation, and from the day, even in the understanding, that foundation, that those stones were laid with the house of God. See, all that understanding of the house of the Lord was set in order, and it was finished. It was finished. We'll find out that's that which was going to be set in order we had spoke of in the prophecies, that I call them prophecies, even in the names that God said I called them by name. It was finished. So the house of the Lord was perfected, and God's plan, God's house, God's blueprint was carried out, and everything was perfected just like it was said it was going to happen. 17. Then went Solomon to Etzion Geber, to Elah on the seashore in the land of Edom. So, after all this is accomplished, Solomon, his peace, now is going to go to Etzion Geber. And Etzion is your spine, or your backbone, or this which represents erectness, to make you straight up, to give you your uprightness. Geber is this, means warrior. It's a warrior. So we have this backbone of the warrior. And Elot is the place of exalted strength, and this is a city. Elot is those exalted strengths, or these strengths that are in the sense of twisting, and these exalted in the sense of being up, like horns on a ram. We would kind of look at them like that, in this exalted, twisted strengths. They are on the seashore of the land of Edom, and Edom it means red, and red refers to those that show the blood in the flesh. 18, and Curam sent by the hands of his servants ships and servants that had knowledge of the sea. And they came with the servants of Solomon to Ophir, and fetched from there 450 talents of gold, and brought them to King Solomon. And Curam, remember Curam, nobility, those that exalted, those that are lifted up, we can tell them by the color of the clothes they wear. We could in those days. That's what we have with Curam. He's the ones of nobility. And by his hands, these hands are always going to represent these works. His servants, Curam, he's the king of Tyre, sends his servants in the ships, and the servants that had knowledge of the sea, and these would be his servants that had knowledge of the sea, of these ships that sail the sea, even these seas being all the understandings. And they came with the servants of Solomon to Ophir. Solomon has sent his servants, as well as with the servants of Curam, to the place of Ophir. Ophir is always in reference of this purest gold, of its purest sense. Gold is that which belongs to God. But Ophir has this being reduced to ashes, and that because that's what it takes to purify gold in a furnace. See, would be great amounts of wood, and these things that would be reduced to ashes to produce this pure of gold. And he fetched from there these 450 talents of gold. And this four is always going to be the work of God. And 100 is in judgment. 50, now there's grace in the law, talents being weighed out of gold. And that is that from God. And they brought them to the King Solomon. Because we're going to find out, see, Solomon has the house of God's done, and now Solomon has got a great thirst to build, and he's taxing the people, and he's gathering up gold and wealth. He's doing after all the pleasures that Solomon wants to. And we'll just follow along. We're going to move forward to chapter 9. God says turn and return.